The deadline just passed, and almost nobody shopping for groceries noticed. As of yesterday, August 16th, the best by date had passed for Taylor Farms salsa, guacamole, and pico de gallo, along with jalapeno products pulled from Whole Foods. But here's the problem with treating a printed date like an expiration on danger itself. The outbreak behind this recall is still active, the case count is still climbing, and a date on a label does not make contaminated product disappear from refrigerators. This is the story of how it got this big and why the deadline passing changes almost nothing. Here is where things stand right now. The CDC and FDA report 345 people infected across 27 states, with 36 hospitalizations and 0 deaths so far. The outbreak has been building since illnesses started back in mid-June, but it did not get identified and traced until early August, which tells you something about how long contaminated product can move through the supply chain before anyone connects the dots. Minnesota and Colorado have been hit the hardest, each logging around 110 cases. Investigators interviewed 191 of the people who got sick, and 93% of them said they ate at a Mexican-style quick-service restaurant before getting ill, with Chipotle and Qdoba both named specifically. That is not a coincidence. Traceback investigators followed the supply chain all the way back to a single grower of jalapeno peppers in Sinaloa, Mexico, distributed in the United States by a company called Coast Citrus Distributors. One farm, one distributor, and from there the peppers fanned out to restaurants and food service companies across nearly half the country. Once the source was confirmed, the recall spread fast, and this is the part that should actually worry you more than the restaurant angle. Coast Citrus Distributors recalled the raw jalapenos. Taylor Fresh Foods followed with a recall covering their prepared products made with those peppers, sold under names like Taylor Farms, Trader Joe's, and Private Selection. Whole Foods pulled salsa, guacamole, and pico de gallo from stores across a dozen states, and then the USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Service stepped in with a public health alert covering at least 18 different ready-to-eat meat and poultry products, things like pre-made wraps, bowls, and salads sold at Walmart, Kroger, H-E-B, Albertsons, and Hannaford, because those products also contain the contaminated peppers as an ingredient. Think about what that means. A single bad batch of peppers from one farm did not just affect restaurant tacos. It worked its way into salsa jars, guacamole tubs, and prepackaged deli meals sitting in refrigerated cases at some of the biggest grocery chains in the country. That is the traceability problem in a single case study. One point of failure at the farm level, and it cascades into dozens of finished products under dozens of different brand names before anyone outside the supply chain even knows there is a problem. And here is the detail that should really get your attention. The CDC has noted that this particular Salmonella strain carries a predicted resistance to commonly recommended antibiotics. That does not mean people cannot be treated. Most Salmonella infections resolve without antibiotics at all, but for the more serious cases that do need medication, doctors may have to reach for a different, less standard antibiotic than they normally would. That is a detail that rarely makes the headlines, but it matters if you or someone in your household ends up needing treatment. So about that deadline, the Best Buy window on the Taylor Farms and Whole Foods downstream recalls officially closed yesterday, but a printed date does not reset risk to zero, and illness incubation periods do not check calendars. The CDC has said explicitly that the true case count is likely higher than what has been reported, since Salmonella infections take time to diagnose, which means people are almost certainly still getting sick from product that was sitting in a fridge before that date passed. If you have any jalapeno-containing product at home right now, from Taylor Farms, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, or the retailers named in the FSIS alert, check it against the official recall list regardless of what the date on the label says, and throw it out if it matches. This outbreak is a reminder that a recall notice is not the end of a story. It is usually the middle of one. The investigation is still open, the case count is still expected to climb, and the same distributor and grower relationship that caused this could just as easily produce another headline in a few months if nothing structurally changes. That is worth watching, and it is exactly the kind of story this channel exists to track. The deadline may have passed, but the risk hasn't, and that gap is exactly why staying informed matters. Hit like to help more people see this before they toss the wrong assumption along with their groceries, and subscribe so you never miss the next update on this outbreak as it develops.